this is the number one thing that all of us could improve on is communication. And there's reasons why, because to make your relationships as healthy as you could be, like to build trust, emotional intimacy, also just have self-respect for yourself, that you're advocating for your needs, and to just help expectations.
Hi, welcome back to Shrinks on Tap. Today we're going to talk about communication. What type of communicator are you? Most of you all don't know that there are 4 styles of communication. So we're going to talk about which one you are and how to become a better communicator. But first, we're going to talk about our stats here.
Communication is hard, but we're going to make it easy for you. But before we do that, we want to acknowledge the background change you may have noticed if you're watching us on YouTube. To be quite honest, we're not that tech savvy or light savvy. We kept setting up and taking down, and then we decided we're just going to go and set it up in a loft in Eleni's house because we'll never have to break it down again. So we wanted to acknowledge that, but the irony is, or maybe the synchronicity is that like in 2014, we decided we were going to be YouTube stars, and we set up in this very space a video camera, and it took us maybe 2 hours to do a 2-minute meditation, and we were like, this is it. And that was the only video we ever made. So little did we know that we would be here podcasting, 13 years later. So that's the fun thing about life. But here we are. And also, we're back to drinking today, but we are both drinking probiotic energy drinks.
Bloom.
Vive.
Post World Cup so that we can detox.
Yeah, I don't know about you guys. It's been a really fun summer of connecting, but a lot of alcohol. And yes, no, I didn't need to drink when I was at the games, but I did, and it was fun. But it's also nice to feel clear. So support to our health. So we want to be really clear about communication, which is our topic today. So would you like to start us off?
Okay, so what are the 4 styles of communication and which one are you? The 4 styles are aggressive, passive, passive-aggressive, and the ultimate goal is assertiveness, assertive communication. So we're going to kind of talk about all of these, give you some examples. I love talking about passive-aggressive communication because I think a lot of us do this and don't realize we're doing it, and we're thinking, well, I'm just communicating clearly and putting up my boundaries. No, you're being passive-aggressive. Yeah. Maybe you don't know you're being passive-aggressive, so we're going to talk about that.
Yeah, totally. And maybe a little bit about why, why we have these styles. But I'd say this is the number one thing that all of us could improve on is communication. And there's reasons why, because to make your relationships as healthy as you could be, like to build trust, emotional intimacy, also just have self-respect for yourself, that you're advocating for your needs, and to just help expectations. So there's a lot of benefits to making sure we communicate well, but it's not always easy.
No.
So let's talk a little bit about the styles, just so people can start thinking about what camp they fall in.
And also that this is a learned behavior. I think we have to emphasize that you have learned this most likely from your family of origin.
And society.
And society, and the messages we get about gender and different parts of ourselves, what's acceptable, what isn't. So, okay. So which one should we start with?
All right, let's start with aggressive, because I think some people pretty much have a good idea. But how would you describe aggressive?
Yeah, aggressive is... it's kind of like the name calling, the you statements. So, when you do couples therapy, you say, when you did this, it made me feel like that. That's a good way to express how you feel versus you are a jerk, or you made me feel this way, or you did that. There's like kind of an aggressive, people don't understand that aggressive communication style doesn't necessarily have to be screaming and yelling and throwing things. It could just be an aggressive communication style where you're attacking someone verbally.
Yeah, I think that the blaming, like this is your fault, and words like always and never, like you always mess things up, you never care for me, like those are very like detrimental words. But the blaming, the intimidation, accusations, so sure, and straight up, right, cursing, yelling, like intentionally trying to harm too. Sometimes aggressive communication is trying to harm and hurt the other person. Other times it is a result of just poor communication because of what you've learned. So, but that is the overall like kind of gist.
Yeah.
And you normally know if you're being aggressive.
And there's a lot of interrupting, right? There's a lot of criticizing, demanding. Like, it just doesn't feel good.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about passive.
Okay. So passive communicators go around the bush. They just, they don't really directly say what they want, or they might not even know what they want. They might not speak it. They might not know it. They're very much like avoiders.
Yeah, this is your camp of individuals who avoid stating their needs for fear of conflict or rejection. So they're more likely to say nothing. So I think you had this example we were talking about where it's like, someone's like, what do you want to eat tonight? And someone really wants to eat Italian. They're like, whatever you want. Like, because they're like, oh, what if I fear and my partner doesn't want that? And it's a small example, but that's sort of the general gist. You don't say what you need or want for fear of, upsetting the other person, hurting their feelings, or being criticized.
Yeah, and if you think about how do we learn this, think about the family of origin that would teach this behavior. So let's say in a family, it's not considered acceptable to express uncomfortable feelings or to have conflict. So this sometimes falls under the radar because people say, oh, I had a great childhood, a great family environment. Nobody ever fought or argued. Well, nobody ever fighting or arguing or disagreeing doesn't necessarily mean it's a healthy communication style.
Right.
So there could be just a passivity. And we're like, I don't have my opinion, or if I express my opinion, it gets punished. Or, girls are meant to be seen and not heard, so I'm going to be quiet and be the good girl in the corner. Or if I do speak out, it's going to attract negative attention. So people very quickly learn to become more passive. It doesn't feel good to speak out their opinion and their feelings. They don't know what they are sometimes.
Yeah, and I don't know if you agree with this, but I think that sometimes people are like, oh, I'm just easygoing. I'm agreeable. It's okay. And for some people they are, but I think that it's okay. Yeah, sure, whatever you want. Like that just loss of ability to, first of all, identify what you truly want and then actually express it. So I think that falls in that camp too, just for self-examination.
Yeah. Yeah, oftentimes in therapy, I ask people, what do you want in that relationship? And they're like, I don't know. What do you feel? I don't know. What do you think about that? I'm not sure. Right. So there's like this shutting down. Okay.
I also think one more thing is when people are just like, yeah, all right, I'm letting it go. So I think there is times when we do choose to let things go because we don't feel like it's not important enough to advocate. But I think that also a lot of people sometimes use that, well, it's just easier. I'm just going to let it go. They did that. I'm letting it go. And that's actually can be, a hidden way of being passive. So, all right. So let's talk about passive aggressive. That's the most fun.
Oh, yeah. Passive aggressive, because this one's not as obvious. Okay. Passive aggressive. How can you think of it? It's like beating around the bush, not getting to the point. Like, it'd be really nice if people put the dishes away.
Like, you're upset, but I'm not telling you directly. I'm going to hint at it in some way that has an edge, like sarcasm or that, right? Like, I'm upset. I'm going to give you the silent treatment, but you don't know that I'm upset. Yeah. That's passive aggressive.
Silent treatment is definitely passive aggressive. Yeah. Instead of saying, can you please put the dishes away? That's a direct, right? Yeah.
Like sometimes people are like, it must be so nice to have so much vacation time. And I'm like, what are you saying to me, right? And, I think of this one example back in the day that I had a friend who was always late. And at that time in my life, I was like really stickler for time. And she wouldn't tell me she was late. And I'd be sitting there, and the more time that passed, the more pissed I'd get. But yeah, when she came, I didn't tell her. I was just kind of like grumpy. And she's like, what's wrong? I'm like, nothing. And then finally I was like, hey, it really upsets me that you're late. And she's like, oh my God, I had no idea. I'm sorry. I thought you were just flexible with time because you've never said anything. And I was like, yeah, but I'd sit there kind of stewing, having this like sitting there all angry. And then I would just kind of like, be a little edgy to her and irritable. That is passive aggressive.
Yeah. I had a really close friend who would say to me, like after I got married, he's like, you brutally abandoned me. Like that. And I was like, what? What did I do? And he's like, ha ha ha, I'm just kidding. But he would say it very frequently. Yeah. Enough so that I was like, why do you keep saying that to me? Do you have something to tell me? So it was just like, that is not assertive communication.
Yeah.
That's very passive aggressive.
Well, and also, like, if you're in a family that anyone's a guilt tripper, that would be it. Like, here's a lot of Jewish families, and I'm from Long Island, so, it'd be like, oh, Robbie came to visit me yesterday. He's such a good son. He comes every day. And someone's like, what the hell? Like, what are you saying? Oh, if you loved your mother, you would come more, so there's just this like hinting around too, but you normally know because you're like, you get a feeling like, oh, that doesn't feel good, so that's passive aggressive.
Yeah. Okay.
And then there's assertive.
So assertive is our goal.
Yeah, which is what we're going to explain. And assertive is that right balance of expressing your needs, but also caring about the other person's needs too. So we're going to come back because that's our acronym, the HARD, that we're going to teach you. But, talk to me a little bit more about why conversation and communication is difficult for people.
Yeah, I think that people's communication styles, well, there's so many things, but their communication styles dictate how they communicate. And so let's say you put two people together and one is passive aggressive and one is avoidant. Like the example you gave with the waiting for your friend that was always late. And then you don't know how to express that, because then if you're an avoidant, for example, then you're like, well, I'm going to hurt their feelings. And if somebody's aggressive and they get their feelings hurt, then they'll react aggressively. So it's like, I always say to my clients, everyone's coming to the table with their baggage of stuff, with their suitcase of stuff, and they're viewing the world from the lens of their trauma, right?
Yeah.
And there's nobody on earth that doesn't have any trauma. Like, everybody has some trauma. And that's going to color the lens of how you interpret things.
Yeah, I think, the big ones, and you're hitting on this, the fear of hurting someone's feeling, fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of disappointing people. And I think of a story that happened with us that, like, when we were buying our building and we had multiple lenders we were talking to, and a friend of mine had connected me with this lender, and I felt my friend had gone out of his way. This lender, he spent a lot of time with us. We had a rate, and then Eleni found a different lender and they had a better rate. And I was like, oh, but we spent all this time. I feel bad. We're going to tell this guy and he's going to be upset. Like, it's almost like this, and we'll get into the female thing about like, oh, hurting feelings. And I remember you being like, would a man care? And I'm like, probably not. And not to overgeneralize, but women are more attuned to feelings. Men aren't. They're just like, it's business. And that has been so helpful for me, because I remember calling and I'm just like, hey, it just comes down to business. We decided to go with this person versus the other. And they were like, absolutely fine with it. They're used to that. But here I am, got all worked up that they're going to be mad at me and upset, Do you remember that?
I don't even, like, now it's jogging my memory, but it's so funny. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've used that a lot to be like, it's just facts, just communicate, because we as women, you mentioned this, we're socialized, right? To have harmonious relationships or to be quiet. So a lot of people do think when they're speaking up, they're being mean. If I'm assertive or I speak, I'm being mean. Or I'm being selfish. That is something that comes up a lot.
The selfish comment comes up a lot. I'm going to be selfish, or I'm going to offend them. And so then there's almost like an all or none thinking, especially for, like you're saying, like with women. It's like either I'm going to be passive and quiet and agreeable, or I'm going to be mean. There's no in the middle for a lot of people. They can't perceive the middle.
Well, and I think that when people have to express tough things too, I hear often, well, I don't want to fight. Well, why is expressing your feelings or something that you disagree about, why is that a fight? It's almost like there's an expectation, I'm sure based on people's backgrounds, but I hear that a lot. And I feel like that's really important to correct, like communicating feelings for the purpose of solving problems or growing your relationship is a really adaptive behavior. And I think when we put that, like, hey, when we communicate hard things for the greater good of the relationship, then it feels a little bit better versus like, if I talk, we'll fight,
Yeah, it's tolerating discomfort too, because these conversations can be uncomfortable. And if we've never tolerated discomfort because they've been avoided, of course, there's no template for that in your memory.
Yeah, and honestly, I think, looking at generational differences too, a lot of us are healing from our parents. It used to be, right, just pray to God, never talk to anything, right? The grandparents, you didn't talk about your problems, right? And every generation's getting better. But, you're right. Like, did you observe people screaming at each other and not resolving things? Did you observe no one's saying anything? Did you observe one parent, being very aggressive and the other one just being submissive and dependent? So we are often having to learn, but I just want to emphasize it is hard. It has been hard for me. I've learned over time to become more comfortable, and that's the only way to do it, right? Is as we're doing it, because there's something that's really powerful about when we are honest about what we're feeling. So
that made me think of like my upbringing. So I remember that, well, one of my clients recently said that, oh, nobody yelled in my house. That's just like, are you serious? Do people yell in their houses? And I'm like, that's how we talk to each other. And I remember when we had a restaurant and my dad and I were having a conversation in the restaurant. And our arms are flailing around, we're yelling, and one of the bartenders comes up to us and goes, "Are you guys okay? Are you fighting?" And we're like, "We're just talking." And they're like, "Oh, you're just talking? Like, this is how we talk." So it was alarming to them that this is how we just talk. We're not fighting right now. So could you imagine? It was very disconcerting for that person.
Like, you saying that, I can feel like a little anxiety, because that's how my husband and his sister, they're like, wow, really loud and animated. And they're like, we're not fighting. But I'm like, why are you yelling? And I'm like, ah. But I guess in this case, and there's cultural differences, right? So the thing that's important is, like, you guys know your communication, right? So it is important to take that into account also.
Yeah, right. That's how you learn it. So then I'm thinking that I need to unlearn that. because if I'm talking to people that way, that's going to be very dysregulating for some.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
All right, well, let's break down, okay? So, okay, great information. How do we communicate in a way that's healthy? Okay. So let's talk about hard, okay? HARD.
Okay, so hard. So you can remember this. H is honest. Okay, should we go through all four of them or just start with H? Start with H. Honest. Honest means you're expressing your feelings, your needs, your expectations, your limit. You're just speaking in an honest way how you feel. Okay. Yeah,
and you've done that because you're going to feel good that you've represented yourself, versus like leaving conversation like, I wish I had said that, or I only told them like part of it. You will be like, okay. And it's liberating to you. And we owe it to the people in our lives also to be honest. I mean, we owe it to ourselves, but we owe it to them, because sort of like the example I gave with my friend, a lot of people are doing things unconsciously and they don't even understand that they're hurting your feelings or they're upsetting you. So how are they ever going to change that pattern of behavior if we're not communicating with them? And it's not fair to sit and be angry at them. So I'm always like, let's give people a chance, because once you actually express what you need, that's really where the evaluation goes on. Do people listen? I don't want to go on a sidebar, but like, do they respond to that? And it's relieving, because if you've ever held on to something for a long time, repress those feelings, what happens?
Illness, physical illness, mental illness, just all these different things, energetic things happen.
Or aggressive outbursts.
Or aggressive,
right?
You explode eventually.
Then you're going to explode and be like, blah, 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 into that aggressive, yeah, you suck.
But that example you gave with your friend again, I think that's such a great example, because that was a good opportunity for a reparative moment, and like to see the resilience and the authenticity of that friendship. Because in that moment, instead of saying, it's fine, you said, no, actually, I don't, I don't like it when you're late. It upsets me. It's a, waste my time. And then she in that moment could have reacted with, well, too bad, get over it. But instead she was like, oh, I didn't realize that. So now you have an authentic communication, an authentic moment where you're both honoring each other's feelings rather than avoiding them.
Totally. And being honest requires three things: self-awareness, vulnerability, and emotional responsibility. So self-awareness really is, right, to notice you are upset. Okay, like something happened to you or you're not getting a need met. So, and to really ask yourself, what am I really upset about? Like often anger shows up and underneath it's anxiety or hurt. So like, what is it that I'm really upset? So getting clear on that before you communicate. Vulnerability, right? That's the part where we're actually willing to like pull back those emotional layers to say, I feel this. That is vulnerable, right? Because we're trusting people to listen, respect, and hear us, and not everyone will do that. But when you open that or set that scene to be vulnerable, you're also, yes, as you said, that authentic communication, also giving people the permission to do that in return. That's what sets a good environment for communication. And then like the emotional responsibility is like owning your feelings. It's your responsibility to understand, to share, to regulate your emotions. It's not someone else's to figure out what you're feeling or to mind read. So that's the honesty part.
Just to elaborate a little bit more on the self-awareness, because I think that people can get confused with this. Self-awareness meaning not just noticing that you're upset, but noticing, sitting with the feeling that's coming up when you're upset. Because we do have things that have happened to us in the past that these things can trigger that aren't necessarily related to what is happening in the moment. So, for example, if somebody says something in a certain way and it upsets you, sitting with it and saying, okay, is this because of what this person just said to me? Or does this remind me of something that happened to me in my past that's being triggered? So just sitting and reflecting and noticing how you feel, that self-awareness is really important.
Yeah, I think this could be a great follow-up episode.
Yeah.
There's a lot of elements to that, like even just delaying when you can. Just never communicate in the moment when you're dysregulated. Because after 15 to 20 minutes, your brain will come back online and you'll be more settled and you can be clearer. So whenever possible, take time before you communicate. But the honesty is the big thing. And there's a simple formula I use too, which is like, I feel this. This is what I need. Or when this happened, I felt this. So it can be really elementary with just the honesty of like, I felt this. This is what I need. Okay, so honest. Okay, we got that covered. Let's go into assertiveness.
Okay, so assertiveness is basically falls under the premise that I matter and you matter. So both of us matter. And this sounds very simplistic, but actually a lot of people don't consider that they matter equally to someone else. They put other people's needs before them. There's a lot of people-pleasing behaviors that are common. So instead of, well, I guess it's okay, it'll be fine, you're honoring how you feel. So you're assertively and respectfully, which is the next one, the hard, but you're assertively expressing yourself and not being passive. So remember the passivity we talked about before. Okay. I don't know if I'm being clear on this one.
Well, and I think it's what I started to allude to, that I feel this, right? You're going to like name your emotion and be really clear about it. Hey, I was really hurt when you didn't reach out after my father passed away. That would be very clear communication, right? Or, hey, what I need from you right now is this. So you're really naming and stating what you need. What do you want for dinner? I want Italian food tonight. I'm not going to say whatever, or maybe sometimes we should get Italian and what about my interests, Like it's honestly kind of really simple, but also difficult at the same time. There's also, I think, a measured tone to what we're speaking, right? I think when we can speak in a way that's regulated, I think to me, assertiveness always just feels balanced. I'm speaking my needs, but being respectful of yours. We both matter, as you mentioned, but I'm going to be very specific about what I need.
Yeah. Okay. So, respectful.
Yeah.
So the next one?
Yep. So, which I just got into, right? So the respectful, you know what I think about? I think about every time we're in a communication space with someone, it's sort of like a bubble. Okay. And we want it to be a safe bubble. And I think in order for us to, be respectful, like it's, first of all, it's respecting ourselves that our needs matter, but that theirs also matter. So that means that we're willing to listen also once we speak, to listen to what their side is, to be curious, to avoid insulting and try to avoid reacting or weaponizing things, so avoiding all the negative stuff that we've talked about. But I think that going in with the pro-social attitude, that their words matter and so do mine, and also a belief that we can communicate and repair and fix this. Always go in with a positive assumption.
The respectful part is I think what you mentioned is important, is not weaponizing people's vulnerability. Because when you have a relationship with someone, true intimacy can't exist without vulnerability. So when you're vulnerable with someone and then they weaponize that against you, that is not being respectful. So really think about that. The name calling is also not respectful. So you can have an argument that is respectful without name calling and being sarcastic. Sarcasm is a passive aggressive communication. So sarcasm does not belong in the respectful category when you're practicing this hard acronym, right? That's just like noticing what really feels disrespectful, contempt, those types of qualities. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and, I really think we have a lot of power to affect our reality. Sometimes you are walking to a conversation with someone you already know struggles with communication. But when you set a tone, you have a lot of power if you're using the words, I feel this way, this is what I need, or I care about you, that's why I'm talking to you about this. You set a tone that is going to affect their response, for sure. So, and that asking the question, am I trying to understand right now, or am I trying to win this conversation?
Yeah.
Because it'd get really easy to be like, well, no, I'm right because this, and you're seeing it wrong. So that's, I think, a level 2 conversation for us, is how to handle once you do the appropriate communication. Someone dismisses you or comes back at you aggressive. That will leave for another episode. But for you, again, what is my intention here?
Yeah, intentionality gets communicated indirectly as well. It just gets picked up.
Yeah. And then last D. So we have honest, we have assertive, we have respectful, and then we have direct.
Yeah. And the opposite of direct is people expecting you to read their mind. There's a lot of mind reading that people expect, you should have known I needed that.
If they loved me, they would know. I shouldn't even have to ask, right?
Oh, I love that one. Yeah. I shouldn't have had to ask you, right? Or you should know not to say that. Yeah, of course, sometimes there are moments where you should know not to say that. But, we're not mind readers. So you have to really practice directly saying.
Yeah, and I think part of this is that, women, and I don't know, the research will say that gender differences are negotiable, but I'd say based on observations, women tend to be more attuned to emotions of others. So we do pick up things a little bit easier. I'm not going to say it's all generalized. However, and men tend to be more solution focused. So you often will hear the men, at least the men I see in therapy, are like, just tell me what to do. If you tell me, I will do it. I just need to know, because there's no way I'm able to read your mind. So I do hear often it feels like more it's the women, and so you're misinterpreting their inability to not mind read as not caring. And that's detrimental, because then you start building up resentment, right? They don't give a shit. They didn't see me upset, well, and sometimes your partner may pick that up if they know you well. They're like, you seem a little bit off, but why wait for them if they're even able to do that? You might be sitting hours or days. Instead of cutting that off at the pass and 5 minutes later just saying, hey, I'm upset. What if you resolve that in 5 minutes versus 5 hours? Then you have just relieved your entire nervous system of holding anger and resentment, and you feel better and you're moving on with your day.
Yeah, versus letting it fester and then build into the next offense and the next offense and the next one, right? It just keeps building. So address it when it comes up. And even if it's not the right time in that moment, you can say, is something bothering you? Saying yes, and can we talk about it later? Because right now it's not a good time. So it doesn't mean you have to do it right now, but just be honest and say, yeah, I am upset.
Yeah. Healthy relationships do not require telepathy. They require clarity. We all do better when we know.
Yeah.
It is. It's like a gift to know what people are thinking. We cannot fix things if we don't know what's happening. And everyone is different, so that's what the triggers. And that, the love isn't measured by the mind reading, it's measured by the responsiveness after we communicate our needs. So that is a big thing. If we are doing all this HARD, I feel like I'm almost going to say 9 out of 10 times it's going to work out pretty well for you. And then we look at what people do with that. Like my friend, if I had told her it really upsets me that she's late and she's like, okay, I hear you, and then continues to be late the next 5 times without telling me or making an effort, I'd be like, all right, you don't care. You don't care enough about my needs that I was upset, And then I decide if I want to give her a second, chance or not.
Yeah, and then if you go with this assertive philosophy, then essentially you're saying to yourself, if my time is just as important as your time, then I'm not going to waste it.
Right.
So then perhaps at that moment, this is how our relationships shed as well. As you grow through your life and evolve and develop, some relationships shed because you may be implementing these changes and the people that are meant to be there with you are there, they stay there, and the ones that maybe aren't cannot match up to your communication or your growth. Right?
Yeah. And I'm remembering with that friend too, like she did end up disclosing, she's like, I just have a lot of time with time management issues. And she's like, so why don't you just tell me a half hour earlier? And it worked. I would just tell her a half hour earlier. So we came up with a solution together that was agreeable. So yeah, I think the direct, I think of an example with you last year. There was something that happened with Eleni that I got triggered. I totally jumped to conclusions. I made assumptions, right? Which is what most of us do about a situation when we don't have the information. And I remember I was getting all fired up, and then I'm just like, I know her though. I know that you would never intentionally hurt me or deceive me because we have a good working, it's like my work wife, right? So, and I remember I was like, let me just go sit in her room right now and tell her and be like, hey, I've just got to ask you some questions. Like, I'm feeling upset about this. And Eleni cleared it up right away. And I had misread everything because I didn't have all the information about it. And one thing that I love, and I think that in a good relationship, is that you can again, just sit. You didn't react. You were able to give me the information. And I was so glad I did that because I can be a stewer. I can sit and, you said fester. I can sit and stew and be like, have a whole war in my head. I can't believe they did that, But I also know the value of addressing things quicker now. I just don't want to carry things that I don't need to carry. And a lot of times there are things we don't need to carry.
Yeah, it's heavy.
Yeah.
So what is the takeaway, right? Remember the hard on being honest, assertive, respectful, direct. Asking yourself which one of the communication styles do you fall under. Aggressive, passive, passive, or assertive. Always moving towards assertive. And what are the obstacles? Anything else you want to cover about obstacles other than fear of rejection and fear of abandonment?
No, I think we've said it all, to tell you the truth. I think that, the only things I would add right now is that, know that if you are working on your communication style, it is like chipping away. It is exposure therapy. And you will feel discomfort, as you mentioned, but you're also going to feel like you're rewiring your pattern every time you speak honestly and advocate your needs, regardless of what comes back at you. You're going to feel good because you're like, I did it. I communicated in the way, because that's what you can control. And then it becomes a little bit easier every time. And if it's really a struggle ahead of time, you can write it out. I always say, write out your feelings, maybe even practice them in the mirror if it's a big conversation, then do it. That just kind of primes you to do the right thing. But just know that communication can be easier and is for the greater good. It is for your well-being and the well-being of the other.
Yeah. Okay. So hope this was helpful, and thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time. Drinks on tap.